Life is a song. And what if your faith could help you hit the high notes? Grammy-nominated and Dove Award-winning artist Torrin Wells invites you into The High Note.
It's The High Note.
A podcast about real life, real struggles, and a real God who meets you right where you are. With honesty, insight, and encouragement, Torrin tackles the issues you're facing every day and helps you rise above the noise. If you're ready for a fresh perspective on your faith, tune in to The High Note podcast with Torrin Wells.
Welcome to The High Note.
Available now wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. We're going to be talking with Eric Garcia, known as Uncle Scotchy, and he is a son and a caregiver and a creative, and he's going to share with us his journey caring for his mother, who lived with early onset Alzheimer's disease, and he's even written a play about this. So before I introduce you to him, I always encourage everyone to check out alzheimerspeaks.com. We have a ton of free educational resources, all different types of mediums, as well as our sister company, which is a global resource directory called Dementia Map. Both are free to access, so have at them and feel free to share. And if you have a service, product, or tool that you'd like added to Dementia Map, you can easily do that. There's a button on the front page, or you can reach out to me and I can help you with that as well. All are welcomed. And last, I'm just going to give a shout out to Q for Good. They're my webmasters and I adore them. And if you're looking for somebody good, who's accountable, who's knowledgeable, gets stuff done on time, they're your source. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and meet Eric. Well, Eric, I'm thrilled to have you on the show and hear your story and kind of how you used your creative mind, to share your story with others. So I'm going to have you, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to our audience. Who the heck is Eric?
I am Eric Garcia. Born and raised in Miami, Florida. I'm a musician and I put on events. And my mother had early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 59, and she passed at 67. She was an art gallery owner, and I dealt with that pretty much with my father. And from that, the experience of doing that and taking care of my father after that, I wound up writing an immersive play called The Blues Opera, where I told their stories, just try to keep them alive and the memories of them and what they went through alive. That's pretty much who I am.
Okay, well, great. Well, let's start with your story of, what was it like growing up, with your parents before dementia knocked on the door? Yeah,
I'm a very Miami species. I'm what they call a Cuban. My mother was a Jewish woman and my father was Cuban. He sold her 1966 Mustang fastback, powder blue. That's how they met, and so they really grew up when Miami's kind of the Wild West back in the day, and so then I was an only child, so I had the whole Miami experience. And Miami has a lot of Jewish people and a lot of Cuban people, so I would have to split the holidays. I'd be doing Yom Kippur, and then we just would do Noche Buena for Christmas. And so I got really a lot of the flavor and the cultures of Miami in. She used to be a ballet dancer, and that was her background. There were Russian Jews on her side, and My father was actually a very good salsa dancer too, so they used to dance together a lot. And growing up, it was pretty cool. I always wanted to leave, and I did leave for 8 years. I came back when my mother was diagnosed, but I've kind of learned to love Miami again since I've been back. And I was very disgruntled at first, but now I'm happy I'm back.
That's good. Yeah, a lot of culture, a lot of diversity down in
Yes,
Florida for sure. For
yes.
sure. Um, so I find it interesting with the two cultures and how they met, with and I could just visualize that blue Mustang in my head.
Yeah, I know. It was pretty great. It was a 3-speed too. It was a pretty tough car for my mom to be buying at the
Uh,
times. But yeah, it was that was pretty interesting for her to be driving. And the funny thing is, my dad's all human. He says, it's a good thing I gave her a good deal because I wound up having to pick up the payments.
oh, too funny, too funny. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom before she was diagnosed? What
Yes,
kind of woman
absolutely,
was she?
absolutely. She was a tough little woman with a big mouth and a heart of gold. She was a big part of the art scene in Miami. She opened up a gallery in a place called Colley Square, which is down south, an old artist community. They got started back in the old days, and she opened a gallery called the Art Place, and she was a fierce defender and champion of a lot of local Miami artists. She used to write articles for the paper, basically letting people know that just because they're a local artist doesn't mean that they're not world class, because we have great
Mhm.
artists here in Miami. And then eventually she had that for years. And then eventually she actually opened up a gallery a second gallery in Wynwood, which is amazing. And people think, duh, now, like Wynwood was really built on art galleries and that kind of a commerce. But at the time, she was one of the first ones. I was a kid helping her move the gallery there. I says, "Mom, what are you doing? This is the ghetto. This is scary." And she put her little hand on my shoulder and said, "Eric, honey, one day there's going to be galleries and restaurants all around here." I was like, "Stupid mom." I didn't think she knew, but she was ahead of her time, and she saw that. So she was a hardcore feminist. She used to drag me all since she grew up, with the art gallery and stuff like that. All her friends are lesbians, and so they used to drag me to these National Organization of Women meetings, now marches, and they'd be dragging me down the streets of Miami Beach in the sun, fists in the air and yelling, and they taught me about what all that was about. And yeah, my dad was kind of cool enough to adapt to that, because I mean, being a male from Cuba back in the day, that had to be just a foreign language she was speaking when it was that. But he loved her so much that he learned about that, and he became a feminist too, and he supported everything that she did.
Wow, that's neat. How long were they married?
They were married over 50 years. I remember I flew back for their they got remarried for the 50th anniversary. So yeah, well over 50 years. They got married in 66. No. They got married I believe 68. Yeah, they had me in 70.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, my folks renewed their vows too, but they only made it to 49 and a half years because my mom was diagnosed with her dementia then, but my
Uh-huh.
dad was dying of brain cancer, and we knew that he would make it to the 50th. And so we did a 49 and a half. And we pulled it together in like 2 weeks, and we had about 250 people show up. It was just amazing. We had a real intimate renewal of vows, and then we just had a big party, which was wonderful to see.
That's great. I'm glad you did that. You got to be glad that you did that and didn't. Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, it's nice, when they're so connected to community and different groups and things like that. And you don't see too many people anymore, living together that long.
Yeah, and happily. Yeah, like not just begrudgingly together. I mean, happily together for 5 decades. That's a lot. It's a big ask.
Yep, yep. Yeah, that's for sure. Now, how did your mom get diagnosed? Were there certain symptoms that,
Yeah,
she noticed or your dad noticed or
I
you
mean, I think
noticed?
we all noticed. I mean, that was the main thing was with balancing two galleries that became too much, and which is kind of understandable at first. So you're like, okay, that was a little baby. She bit off more than she could chew, but then she really started getting real flaky, and then we closed one down, and then she wound up closing both galleries down, and then what we did was we converted a large room of the house into a like a showroom, and she started dealing art out of the house. And but even that, uh, uh, she was really having a hard time managing it. And I recently wrote a book about her, about them and her, and I had to go into her old journals for the first time about that, and just kind of seeing how she really felt alone. She even went through a lot for my father, and really was just trying to battle. She was very holistic and very hippie-ish, so she was trying all kinds of different holistic methods because she said she kept complaining about a fog that was in her brain, and she didn't think it was that. And then they have a really good Alzheimer's, a very good Alzheimer's treatment and doctors in Miami. And Mount Sinai, they have a program that's it takes years just to get diagnosed and seen, but somebody from our family is connected with the main doctor somehow, so they were able to kind of get her to the front of the line for a diagnosis. So yeah, I was living in San Diego in '02, and she got diagnosed or diagnosed at the end of '01 or the beginning of '02. I remember, like, officially. So that was pretty huge. That's why I moved home pretty much immediately, even though I didn't want to, because I'm an only child. But yeah, things started slipping. That wasn't like her. She's very, very, very sharp, and I think she knew what it was, but didn't want to admit it, for a long time. And then finally, when it was real, then we just had to deal with it. And it's hard. You don't want to really announce to your family or anything, especially like my father's. Latin cultures. That's something I discovered a lot. Was a lot of Latins and blacks don't like to really. They're not as open about it for some reason. It's like a dirty little secret, and especially Latins. I remember going to like Noche Buena and seeing relatives I hadn't seen in years. I'd be excited to see them, and they were like, "Oh, she's not feeling good. She's just watching TV." And they just watch TV all day, like the novellas, the soap operas in Spanish, and they stopped responding. I didn't really know that look back then, but yeah, I think the more you were able to talk about it a little bit better, because I don't know why people don't like talking about it.
You mentioned that you're writing a book or that you've written a book.
It's being edited now. I just got a publisher, and well, I wrote a play about it, and called the Blues Opera, and it was performed immersively, which means for a smaller audience, and this very interactive play. I did 71 shows, and then now I'm planning on doing it on a larger theater situation. So I wrote a book about it, basically my experience, mostly dealing with her, and then as a caregiver mostly, and it's getting published right now. It's supposed to be released probably this summer.
Okay. Is that the same title or a different title?
Yeah, the play is called the Blues Opera, and the book is called Uncle Scotchy and the Time Thief. And Uncle Scotchy is kind of my musician name that I use as a one man band. I'm more of a blues performer, and the Time Thief is kind of my name for basically the book about my folks and my caregiving of my mother is an autobiography, but I use some blues folklore, and I basically blame, because in blues there's always the devil and demons, the Robert Devil Stole My Woman kind of a thing. So I kind of blame a fictitious blues demon for giving my mother Alzheimer's and stealing her memory. He's the time thief. So that's where the name of it comes from, Uncle Scotchy and the Time Thief. I'm battling this fictitious demon who's just somehow in our lives. That's the only way I could really blame something that horrible that happened to the family. I kind of use that as a way to give it a name and a face.
Well, and a lot of people kind of separate the diagnosis and the person,
Yeah.
in terms of that. And so that's kind of a nice way to be able to do that. So
Hmm.
what were some of the lessons you learned about caring for your folks?
Oh, well, first of all, what I always recommend to everybody, somebody gave me early on, which really was helpful. There's a book out there called The 36-Hour Day, and it's a great book. Um, and you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can just kind of go to where it pertains in your caregiving. There's early stages advice. There's middle stages advice. There's late stages advice. It taught me a lot. Like one of the main things is if your mother or the victim or whoever the Alzheimer's victim is says they did something. Hey, mom, what'd you do today? Oh, I was in Spain. I went to a bullfight. She went to Spain and she went to a bullfight. That's it. There's no, you didn't. You say that, they retract. They retract from you. It makes them scared to talk, and it doesn't really help anything along. It doesn't matter. You got to put your ego aside. You're not going to correct them. They're not going to remember all of a sudden they didn't go to Spain. You're going to make it bad. There's really there's ways you can kind of pivot a lot of things too if they get obsessed with something because they go through different phases. Sometimes they start wanting to leave. They come roaming. So you got to figure out how to lock the doors with a key from the inside so they can't get out. And if they are struggling to get out and they stay persistent, you have to be able to divert. Diverting is very, very helpful with caregiving. And music is a very powerful tool as well that you could play. You play all 10 different songs from 10 different artists, and they might annoy the person you're taking care of. But then if you hit that one song that they really like, it'll just change their mood and fix the whole day. So those are just right off the top of my head, 3 quick things that I can think of because especially when you're kind of dealing with by yourself, you kind of figure out little tricks to help out. Because I mean, one thing I talk about in the book is family on both sides pretty much abandon us. It's something that's not easy to look at and deal with, and so I was very angry with family for a long time. My father was much more understanding than I was. I didn't understand why, but at the end of the day, you just got to do the best you can, and people have to live their lives. But it's a very lonely thing to be a caregiver for.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by to answer your questions for free. Call now and find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell everyone listening who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me here. It's always nice to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now. 800-710-5100. You'll find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now. 800-710-5100.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
Yeah, that family abandonment is way more common than what people think. And every now and then I'll talk with a family where they're all on the same page, and I'm like, you have no idea how lucky you are because.
I've met a lot of people. I met a lot of people, especially during the play, that would speak to me, and there's a lot of family units, and there'll be siblings, and it comes time to make a decision for the person that's being cared for, and then you have a weird hierarchy of siblings. Like one maybe makes a lot of money and doesn't live in town but pays for the treatment. Maybe the other one is there every single day with mom or dad doing the tough work but doesn't really have any money. So then when it comes time to really make a decision about if and when to put the person in a home, they start fighting a lot because the person with the money thinks they have a right to make the decision because they paid. The other one thinks that they were there all the time. They did the dirty work, and they have to make decisions. So in a way, I was lucky to be alone and be the one that had to make the decisions by myself. I learned that as well.
Yeah, it's a big load to carry, but yeah, it's kind of like working for a big corporation or a small firm, as far as the bureaucracy, because there can be a lot of bureaucracy,
Yeah,
and a lot of hurt feelings too.
absolutely.
I'll never forget when I was selling real estate, and I was working with one family, and two sons were out of town. One was an attorney, the other one had a good job, and the third son moved in with his mom to take care of her. And they just didn't feel like they needed to include him in anything. And yet he knew her inside and out. He knew her likes and dislikes. And it was so sad. And what ended up happening was actually kind of scary. At the closing, and he and I got along really well, but he really wanted to sign the documents for the sale. That was going to be part of his closure, but he couldn't because he wasn't listed. He wasn't a power of attorney. And he was so sad about that and so upset. So we're sitting in the closing room, and he keeps like scratching his like ankle. He keeps reaching down, and he's escalating. And of course, the brothers aren't helping the situation. They're like, you can't sign. You're not power of attorney. Da, 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 da. She picked me, making him feel worse. And he would take it more out on me. And I didn't take it personally. And I finally told the closer, I said, I'm going to pull myself out of the room because, he needs to blame somebody. And that somebody is me. And every time I'm in the room, it seemed to escalate, And so thank God I left the room, because after it got all closed, I went back in to talk to the closer to see how it went, because they all rushed out. And she said, he just kept reaching and like scratching his leg constantly, bending over. And I was just going to sit down, and I pulled the chair out he was sitting in. There was a bullet on the floor, and where that could have gone. But people don't understand the anxiety and the connections that people have, and how important it is for someone to feel like they're part of that decision-making process. And that one might have been a little over the top, but you hear of things all the time regarding the dynamics within a family, and people really have to take that more seriously, because he was such a devoted son, so kind. He was so good with her. And I mean, I saw that. The brothers probably didn't, because they weren't around. And I don't know if they really cared, to be honest. With the attitude they came in with, it was just they were going to get the money and kind of run,
Yeah.
and stuff. So that piece is really something that I think more people have to understand. So yeah, being able to do it alone kind of is that double-edged sword, but still having your family abandoned on both sides. I know I got really frustrated with my folks' friends. Like, what's going on here? Why? And what I found out later on was a couple of them were worried that they were going to get it or their spouse had it.
No.
And so they were in denial. So seeing my mom just escalated that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times they don't like just seeing, the mortality and the whole thing, and just kind of seeing their own mortality, and because it's just, some reason or another, if they have like cancer or something, they're dying, they're in pain, they're more comfortable with being there than somebody that, might forget them or say something awkward. And it's really not fair and strange. It's an uncomfortable thing to be around.
Yeah. Well, and we have to be open to talking about it. Like you said, your family really didn't want to talk about it. My folks' friends really didn't. We kind of hid it too, because back then, I mean, that was over 40 years ago. Nobody was talking about it.
No.
They barely knew.
It's a very little secret.
Yeah, dementia wasn't talked about at all.
Nope.
We're still in the big era of you don't share your dirty laundry, and it was in that it was kind of in that bucket. And, health isn't a choice, when people get sick. I loved how you talked about engaging in their world. So when your mom said she went to Spain, so many people struggle with, I'm not going to lie. I've never lied in our relationship, and I'm not going to start now. What do you say to a person who's struggling with that?
It's not a lie. It's adjusting to their reality, and it's not a lie at all. If they believe it 100%, and you have to look at the overall picture instead of the technicality of what words might mean to you. You have to do what's best for that person, and if suspending and supporting that reality helps them have a good day, then who are you to you don't come first.
Mm-hmm.
You don't come first anymore. So you have to remember that. And whatever your little rules are out the window. Because Alzheimer's doesn't care. So do what's best to make the whole ride as comfortable as possible. That's all you can do, because it's not going to end well. So you might as well make the ride as good as you can.
Yeah, there's a saying, you can't win an argument with a person with dementia, so don't even go there.
No.
I learned to focus on, with my mom, was she safe? Was she happy? Was she pain-free? That came first in everything. So if she, like one of the stories kind of similar to your mom's, my daughter went up with her boyfriend to talk with my mom. And of course, they were teenagers. and the boyfriend only knew to talk about cars. That's what he was into. So they're talking about cars. Well, my daughter comes home. I didn't know Grandma had a pink Cadillac with spinners and a sound system. And I'm like, well, first of all, it was there wasn't such a thing as spinners. And we didn't call it a sound system. We were lucky if we had a radio, let alone an 8-track or something. And she never owned a pink Cadillac. You're kidding. She said she got it. And I said, no. I said, my mom always wanted a pink Cadillac. She sold Avon, but she was very envious of the Mary Kay ladies with the pink.
That makes sense. That's
and I thought, oh my gosh, she finally got her pink Cadillac, but the kids just played along with it and were having fun. And, they thought it was real. And like you said, it doesn't make any difference if it is or not. It's about
there's moments that when there's a funny moment, you gotta hold on to a funny moment when something funny happens, and it's for a second that they're back.
Yeah, and they just light up.
Yeah. I remember my mom was going through a phase that she always thought she was late, and we were making her late. Mm-hmm. So she's like, "Are you guys going to go or what?" I mean, we were an hour late, and I was in the kitchen. My father was washing dishes. He had his back to her, and she's yelling at me about being late. And I just kind of, and you're not supposed to do this. So finally, I just kind of like, Mom, where do we have to be? Where? Tell me where we have to be. What are we late for? Which I shouldn't have done. And she's like, well, we're supposed to be there an hour ago, but we're getting ready to leave. But then, and she puts her hand in like a gun, and excuse my language here. She puts it to my father's temple. She's like, but fucko here can't seem to get his shit together, so we're never going to leave. And my dad just looked like, oh my God. And I just started laughing. I'm like, did you just call my father fucko? And then we just all just laughed for like 10 minutes. I'm like, I've never even heard you say that word, Mom. And my dad just turned around and we just all even she started laughing. Because sometimes she would laugh along with us and you could tell she didn't get it. But she got it there, and that was a memory that I always remember.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes people take things so seriously. I tell a story of, we were up at the lake one time, and it was winter, and my mom got in the house, but she slipped in the entryway. I don't know if it was her boots, there's rugs all over, but somehow she landed on the floor. And she could not get up for anything. I mean, we tried, my daughter and I are trying to get her up off the floor, and she just didn't understand, like, bend your knee, and she'd go, okay, and like she thought she was bending her knee.
Yeah.
My husband comes in the door, and he just panic state, we got to get her up, and it's so serious, and we're all kind of laughing and being silly, my daughter and I and my mom. with all this. And Tom comes in just tense, and we got to get her up. And I said, Tom, we're trying, we'll figure out a way. So Tom and I picked my mom up by her shoulders, and and my daughter is standing by the side. And all of a sudden, my mom is walking up the wall. And I'm like, so I'm yelling at my daughter, kick her behind her knees so her feet drop, because we're lifting her and she's just walking up the wall with her feet. And, we ended up just cracking up. And my mom was laughing. Tom finally let it go and just went. Goofy stuff happens sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's,
you always remember that.
Just the way it goes. You also talked about the roaming or wanting to leave, which is really common and can be really frustrating. You talked about, redirecting or distracting. Did you have any certain things that worked with your mom? I know everything's different with every person.
Well, she kept, I would see her kind of come around, and at this point, she had escaped a couple times, and so we changed the lock. And I had the key, so she couldn't get out from the inside. But sometimes she'd get really persistent. She'd try the door. Eric, honey, door's broken, so something's wrong with the door, I'd be like, oh, yeah, Mom, I called the door guy. He's coming to fix the lock, like the door guy. But then sometimes she just wasn't having it. So I had to come up with something. And she had bought this little mirror when we were on a trip to North Carolina. It was like a little pretty mirror, and that had stained glass around it, and there's like a little dried flower in it. And she loved that mirror. So I put that next to the door. And so when she would start doing that, I'd kind of come over. I'd start looking at the door. I'm like, look, Mom. And I would look in the mirror, and she would look at it, and she would just look at herself. And she would start, it was weird at first. She started talking to herself in the mirror. And it kept her occupied for like 20, 30 minutes. I was like, this is kind of creepy, but cool. Like, she's not worried about the door, and I don't have to worry about her. I see her right there. But then what was very strange is I noticed her voice started changing, and it was a very useful, like a little kid voice. And then I started listening to what she was saying, and her name was Sandy. She didn't recognize herself in that mirror. She was talking as a young girl, as a child, to her current form in her 50s or 60s, older Sandy. And that's kind of when that became too much for me. It was just creepy as hell. And just her talking like a little girl to her own reflection was, but it was effective for a little while. And then, you got to realize you're going to come up with some great ideas and pat yourself on the back, but there's cycles, and the distractions aren't going to work, and you always need to find new ones. There's nothing sticks for the whole time, But if you get something that works for a while, awesome. Go with that.
Yeah, you pat yourself on the back and enjoy it while it works. And
yeah. Got that figured out for a week. And then, and then until you don't. And then you got to come up with something else.
Well, and the mirror thing is real common. Some people, they have to cover up all the mirrors in the house because it's scary.
I learned that.
And others it doesn't. I mean, it's just, it's
that's the other thing. It's different for different people. Some are very passive, some are violent. My mom wound up going through a violent phase, and but my great uncle had it, and he was like a kitty cat the whole time. He just basically stopped eating and died. And but some, not everything. It's not the same disease for everybody.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by to answer your questions for free. Call now and find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell everyone listening who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me here. It's always nice to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now. 800-710-5100. You'll find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now. 800-710-5100.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
No, not at all. Well, I want to talk, dive in a little bit more about the power of music too, since you're a musician. I would imagine music was played a big part in your family with your mom with art and things like that. And your dad was salsa dancing and your mom a ballerina and things. So how did that formulate for you? How did you leverage music for your mom?
Yeah, I used to play. I would try to go to the stuff that she liked a lot, and her music. Her and my, there's a lot of. I would do most of my music experimenting on my long days when my dad had to work. There are certain days I would be there for the full day or more, and so. I'd play certain things, and some things would bother her. Oh, turn that crap down, Eric. Something that she used to like, And I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with this artist. There's a guy named Ben Harper, and he was big in the 90s. And and most of his songs are very dreary love songs, but he had a couple bangers. And there was one called "Steal My Kisses" by Ben Harper, and I put that on, and she just couldn't get enough. She used to play it over and over again, or make me play it over and over again. And then I remember one time I was in the other room, and in the living room was where the stereo was, and then there was tile, marble floors, and I hear just on ridiculously loud. I hear "Steal My Kisses." I'm like, Jesus Christ, hell! So I go into the room, and my mother, she had a really bad back. And she hadn't been able to lift anything for years. She was in a car accident, and she had she couldn't lift anything. She was just, she was in horrible physical shape for years and years, as long as I remember since I was a kid. I walk into this room, and this woman has a smile on her face to this song, and she's doing perfect pirouettes, one after the other, and she's ballet dancing to freaking Ben Harper with a huge smile on her face, and I just had to stop and kind of enjoy the moment, take a snapshot in my head, just to see. That's kind of where the world of music and her history of ballet and everything, to answer your question, really found each other in that one little moment. So, but like I said, you have to keep playing things. Then maybe a week later I could put Ben Harper on, and she would tell me to turn that crap off. Yeah. So it's just a question, but they do. I mean, it's very proven that the core of the brain responds to different rhythms and familiarities. The people that don't remember who you are will remember the lyrics to a song that you put on. So it's probably the most powerful and cheapest tools that you can use. I would recommend to anybody is to experiment with music.
Yeah, I would agree. I have on my YouTube channel some videos of my mom with a musician who came in, and she was singing and playing her guitar, and my mom was pretty much in her end stages, and so she couldn't say full sentences, and she slept a lot, and it was going to be an hour session. She only lasted a half an hour, but she would be sleeping, and then Barbara would play, and then all of a sudden she'd wake up and her head would start going, and her hands would start going, and her toes would start going, and then she'd spit out some of the lines, and just this huge smile and giggle. And I've made it into several small shorts, but they are the most powerful, beautiful things. I mean, I've actually walked in on conferences where other speakers have used them as an example. And I remember one guy going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I should have asked." And I'm like, "No, they're for anyone, because it's for education." And the audience every single time is just, you can hear them giggling and laughing and just in awe of this awakening. And then she'd go back to sleep again, and then she'd pop back up again and get involved. But like I said, I encourage people to take videos of that. For me, my mom's been gone 12 years now, and I can be having the worst day of my life, and I'll watch one of those videos and I'm like, it's okay. Life's good.
Absolutely.
It's really small, simple things to see that. And the joy is so pure and so, you can't miss it, once you see it. And I think so often, we're taught to be big and flashy and, keep up with the Joneses. And as this disease progresses, I think the really small things become so powerful and so
Oh
beautiful.
yeah, moments. It's all about moments. It's
Yeah,
all about moments.
yeah. I totally agree with you there. Let's talk a little bit more about your play, the blues opera, your immersive play. And are you still doing that? And what did that look like or feel like to the audience being immersive?
Well, it was quite an experience. I wrote it. I was really having a hard time during the pandemic because my mother died. That took about 9 years, and then I took care of my father for another 10. His disability was physical, spinal stenosis, and all kinds of stuff. But he committed suicide shortly before the pandemic, and then. So then, I was alone during the pandemic and with my little dog and having a hard time. That's when I wrote it. And, well, I was very depressed. And actually, a friend of mine suggested, he's like, why don't you write a blues opera? I'm like, what the hell is that? He's like, you're a blues man and you have a lot of good stories. He's like, put, music story. That's an opera. So I was like, well, I need to learn how to tell a story then. And so I started listening to The Moth, which is a online storytelling. It's been around since the 90s. They're live stories, true stories. And I talked to a friend of mine at a venue that I used to play before the pandemic with my band. Now, bands are still not bands are still not allowed to play at the time. But I asked the venue owner, like, you mind if I start a storytelling night? And, he's like, well, this will be a weekly night and we meet a couple other storytellers. I wanted to be able to workshop my stories about my mom and things like that. He agreed. And that's how I started working on it. And I remember the first night I really told my mom's story thoroughly and properly. Everybody cried. The waitress cried. The bartender cried. Everybody cried. That's when I knew. I was like, all right, this is cool. And then the producers, I knew these women who were theater producers that happened to be there. And their father had passed from Alzheimer's recently. And so they really related and they were crying and they asked me out to lunch. It was my first time out to lunch since the pandemic started. And they were the ones that said that they wanted to produce it. So they wound up hiring a woman, a Romanian woman who lives in New York. She's a director. And she basically got a transcript of all my stories that I told at the storytelling. So she came down and we workshopped and we just basically grabbed a lot of different stories of my mother, mostly. And she decided that it's just such heavy content. We need to figure out a way to make it fun for the person that goes to the play. So we created a game called the Vegas game. So I tell them that, nobody understands that Alzheimer's caregiving is like Vegas. Like, I asked the crowd, have you ever been to Vegas? Says he no. Says, how many of you have been to Vegas and you try to describe to somebody what Vegas is, but you can't. You have to go. And it's the same as caregiving for Alzheimer's. You can tell somebody about it all you want, but you can't really describe it. This is a Vegas game. And so there's a big circle on the wall with different words that were accused of different stories with points. And the better stories are closer to the middle. And so people one by one would throw a little ball and hit the wall, and whatever story they hit, they got those points, but I had to tell that story about my mother. And some of them were funny, some of them weren't. Sometimes I would just play a song. And the whole part of the play became interactive so that that was mostly one side of the whole house was just dedicated to my mother, her song, her stories. There was a bedroom that was completely decorated like she lived there. And I would reenact things about her life in that bedroom. Reenact her passing. There was a portrait I would take down, and I was very upset when she passed in the hospital. That was the whole other story and ordeal. That it's a very long story. And then there was a father's side. So basically, long story short, I did 5 nights a week. It was a 90-minute show. I did 70. It was a 15-person capacity total. $85 ticket. And I did 71 shows 5 nights a week for months, a couple of years ago. And just the impact was pretty epic. And then after the whole play is over, I go out to the back and there's I give the award out to whoever got the most points. They get a shirt and they take a picture with me. Then there's a bar and everybody would just hang out. But then I would hear their stories. You know, that's when, I just talked to them for an hour and a half. I felt that I owed them, the opportunity and the grace to listen to them. It was amazing how many people had been touched by Alzheimer's in one way or the other, or were afraid they were going to be, or were young and they were afraid to be a caregiver, or they're old and they were trying to figure out what to do and how, there's a lot of in the different stages of that. So the connection points that I learned about from that play, from the 71 shows that I did, were really unbelievable, and the amount of people that liked it. But my favorite thing still, there was a rule that if you get upset and you feel like you have to excuse yourself, you can't come back. You have to go to the backyard and wait for us to finish. You can't just leave and come back.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I did get somebody and somebody would cry, inside I'm like, yes. It just made me feel really good, because just for that 1 second they understood what I went through. And it was my little, I knew they felt what I was feeling right then, and that made me feel good. I made sure I spent a lot of time with them outside afterwards. But yeah, that's kind of how that play went. It was immersive. I would make coffee for everybody at one point in the play. The black and white cookies, Jew cookies, as my father called them, we all got to eat when I was telling stories about my mother. So it was quite a ride. It was quite a ride. It really was. It was taxing on me, though, I got to say.
Oh, that sounds really neat, the way you developed that, though, with the wheel and letting them pick and choose, not knowing really what they're going to get when they throw that ball.
There were so many stories, we realized we couldn't fit them all in with the time constraint. So we had a certain amount of time that we would spend on that game. So luck of the draw. But what we did was we tried to put the more valuable stories that I thought were better, more important, closer to the middle. So they would aim for those to try to get those points. So usually it worked out, but I never knew what story I was going to tell next.
Yeah, well, and like when you said when they cry, I was involved in a film, a marketing of a film called A Timeless Love, and when they approached me, they were like, what should we do with this? Should we get it on Netflix? Should we get it, where should we put this thing? Should we put it back when you could rent movies and things like that? And I just said, no. I said, I think these need to be private viewings, in a group where they can feel vulnerable and they can get resources, because otherwise people will walk out of the room and go, it was too heavy. And then they miss the beauty, because they miss those stories of connection on a different level. And so it wasn't all about the grief and the sadness, though that's part of it. There's all these beautiful detours that come with it. And I think a deeper connection, anyways, there was for me, in terms of how you love and how you look at life and how you even prioritize what you want in your life when something like that hits and stuff. So yeah, it is very interesting. But during that, when we would do the film, we would do a talk back, and everybody would want to do a talk at. And I said, no, we're not doing a talk at. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're telling me you're going to get this expert and this expert and this expert, and all they're going to do is talk about their resources. I said, and so I loved when you said you interacted with the audience, because they need to emotionally download after something like that. And the stories that come out and the friendships and the connections I found were amazing during those times. I even had an executive director of a large organization get up and speak afterwards and kind of tell her story. And she came up to me afterwards and just apologized, up one side and down the other. And I'm like, well, why are you apologizing? Your story was beautiful. It was, you were a caregiver. And she was like, been in her position 21 years, never told her story publicly.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Oh, wow.
Not once. But she felt compelled and she felt safe. And I'm like, I can't believe you work for this large organization and you've never shared that. It's
safe is a key word. That's something that people need to feel safe to talk about. And yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so I think it's profound when we can make those connections. And I'm a firm believer that storytelling is one of our best ways to do that, because people can, even like employees, they can memorize what it is they're supposed to say, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean they're applying it. It just means they've got the words down. And I think a lot of us feel that way too. It's like, this is what people expect, but it doesn't really align with real life. And so I think we have to get out of that mindset and get them into a heart set where they really feel a need to change and feel a way to care and feel hope. I think that's a huge gap that's missing in our care system.
Absolutely. Yeah. Instead of just regurgitating information.
Well, let's talk about your future plans. You talked about your book rolling out, Uncle Scotchy and the Time Thief, and you said that's out this summer. Any other things that you're looking at? Did you say you were going to?
Well, I'm talking to directors, and I'm going to convert this book into a theatrical production. So instead of being immersive this time, there's going to be a set. There's going to be some other actors. I already kind of started a script, and so I would like to make it a full theatrical production that have larger numbers of people at the play, and hopefully it could travel around. I started in Miami, but I definitely right now I'm finishing the book, and then I have some people working on an investor deck so that I'm going to be hitting people up to fund, because it's not cheap to put on a play. I'm going to need some backers for that, and so the blues opera, the play is going to be the blues opera once again. I think it'll be just called Uncle Scotchy's Blues Opera. There'll be a band. Actually, there'll be like a set of the house, and then I think there'll be like a garage. That's where the band's going to live. And there's certain times that I play music during the song or play with the band. They can actually score it from the garage. It's going to be kind of dark, and then when I join them, the lights will come up. So it's like a lot of bands practice in the garage anyway. So it'll be kind of like that vibe. And I'm still trying to figure out ways to make it more immersive, like sensory wise. Like I'm experimenting. I have a guy that from a liquor company that he has access to a lot of these little machines that they can create a smell. They use it for tastings, and they put smells. So there's certain smells I would like to let the audience experience, like lilac when it's a story about my mother, or coffee when a story about my father, burnt bagels when a story about my mother. Things like that. So I'm experimenting with that. That's going to be between me and the director. But I knew I had to finish this book that I started about a year ago, and now that I see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So basically, I'm really kind of in a sprint to get it basically turned into a play on a much larger scale, and then hopefully I know some people as well. So hopefully it'll be some sort of a movie or a miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. That's very interesting. Anything that we haven't touched base on, other than I know we've got to give people all your contact information.
Yeah, the book I shared in your blog, that was a chapter from the upcoming book. That's why I wanted to get it out there, but it's not published at all. So I was really proud and happy. I appreciate you putting that on your website. I want to thank you personally for that.
And we'll link that to this show as well. And then
Really
people
would.
reach out to you on your website at unclescotchy.com.
Yes. Yes.
And you are Uncle Scotchy at Gmail if they want to.
Yeah, if they want to email me, yes.
Yep. And then you also have a YouTube channel, a Facebook, a Twitter, an Instagram.
Yeah. Instagram is what I use the most.
Well, thank you so much for, sharing your story and all the things that you're making through this journey to help others out there. I think it's incredible.
No, thanks for the platform and thanks for what you do. I've been, I just learned about you recently and I really appreciate what you've done and what you built so far. And anything I can do to help support you and keep it going and get more eyes and clicks going your way, I'm going to do. Okay.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. To our listeners, I always ask you to be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share. Doesn't cost you anything. It takes a second to push a button, but there are people in your sphere that you don't even know that are dealing with this because we still don't talk about it like we should. But the more information we can get out there, the safer people feel reaching out. Because when they go to Google, they don't even know what to Google for. They have no idea that there's plays and how many books are out there. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on with the resources that are available. And what you need, what I need, what Eric needs, we're all different. And that's okay. But we should have the right, in my opinion, to choice, to match what's going to work for our individual families. And that's a really nice way to support the work that we do here. So we appreciate you being part of the community. Until next time, see you later. Bye now.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.